Welcome. We have an interesting topic today. I think it's an exciting topic, God's plan for salvation, based on the Course of Miracles. Of course, that phrase actually appears 46 times in the Course. So that's a lot. It doesn't always say God's plan for salvation. Sometimes it'll say God's plan of the atonement. So, but that is the plan of salvation, is the atonement. And I'm going to jump out into the slides in just a few seconds here. We will go on. I'm going to just present for, say, about 20 minutes, and then we will break into discussion. We'll come back into gallery view and just have your responses to what I presented. This is a Sunday rather than a weekday evening class, and this is 2 hours rather than 90 minutes. So we will have a break also around 1 o'clock for about 10 minutes. And there'll be a clock on the screen that will tell you you can go to the bathroom, get a sandwich, do whatever you want to do, and come back. Okay. So let's go ahead and get started. I'd like for us to all begin by reading this out loud to yourself. You're muted, so I'm going to read it. And if you just read it along with me, if you don't want to read it out loud, you can just read it quietly. This is the way we're going to start. This is in chapter 2 in the Course. I am here only to be truly helpful. I am here to represent Him who sent me. I do not have to worry about what to say or what to do, because He who sent me will direct me. I am content to be wherever He wishes, knowing He goes there with me. I will be healed as I let Him teach me to heal. So this is just a fun slide. All miracles mean life, and God is the giver of life. In fact, as one of the definitions of God, the Course says, is that God is life. And then the next sentence says, life is in the mind and of the mind. And so God, the Course says, is in you in a literal sense. Not in a literal sense. You are part of Him. So we're a part of the wholeness of God. So it's already in there. That's not the body. At some point, we're going to lose that. But the mind is not something that you can lose. The connection, the love cannot be lost. So today we're talking about this concept in the Course called God's plan for salvation. Just so happens it's GPS. I was giving a lecture the other day to a Spanish group of folks, and I realized that GPS was not going to work in Spanish, but it works out in English. There's a plan that's really remarkable. Those GPS systems, how in the world they can figure that out exactly the minute and all the time zones it's got to go through and all that stuff to figure out exactly where you are. I think it's a good example, though, if we human beings can create something like this, and we've just done it in the last 20 years, then God, who we assume has been working for the past several billion years, could have a system that is so completely specified to each and every thing that it works. Just think what we've done with computers in a very, very short period of time, like I said, last 20 years. It's remarkable. So God says, of course, says God's plan for salvation could not have been established without your will and consent. That's a very important. Keep in mind, if you're a part of God already, right? So this is a part of God's will and consent that we find a way out. It's important that we find a way out. One of the slides that we're going to have in a little bit is going to say that this is an insane world, which you probably all know is one major emphasis in the Course. And it doesn't take a lot for us to realize that it's an insane world. You just turn on television and you watch the news at night, and you can see all the sanity in terms of the kind of pushes for power and I'm right and you're wrong and the fights that are going on. Egos like to fight. The Course is telling us that that's not a way to be happy, and we got to find a different way. The egos like to go for power, and it's not about power at all. It's about sharing and caring with each other. We have to figure that out for ourselves individually. So God's plan for salvation works, I think it's very well in relationship to Matthew 7:13 and 14. You're probably familiar with this particular passage. Enter in at the straight gate, for straight is the gate, and narrow is the way that leads into, and it's what interesting what it leads into. It leads into life. Again, life, full life, complete life, not a sleeping life, not a illusionary life, the life in the wholeness of being back home with God again. Few there are that find it. By that, it simply means a few that really hone it down to the point of enlightenment, of actually waking up, completely waking up and being back home. Jesus is certainly someone who did that, and who Jesus is for us. He is an example of the fact that it can be done. So Jesus, what he does is he realizes that he is the Christ. I think that happens in his wandering in the wilderness experience, where he has the temptation by Satan, who we will say is the ego. In other words, he looks at the ego, he looks at the temptations of the ego, like all the power and stuff that he could get. He could be very manipulative in the world if he wanted to be. But his response to each of these temptations is, get thee behind me, Satan. In other words, he doesn't go that way. He goes for the other way instead, recognizes the Christ, realizes he's going to have to come back and tell people that he is, and he's going to suffer with that, because some people will get it. They will see that that's true, and there's going to be others that will resist it, and it's going to wind up his losing his body. But that's okay too, because it's simply proof of the fact that you're not a body. And then let's go to the second part of the quote. Wide is the gate, broad is the way that leads into destruction. Many there are that go therein. So all egos implode. It's inevitable. They have to implode. You can only go so far into the level of illusion, and it's going to explode within your own self. An alcoholic winds up in the gutter and says, "This is enough. I'm destroyed. But now I'll give up the alcohol and I'll begin to look for a new way home again." It can happen lots of different ways. It depends on the individual. We'll have a quote a little bit later which says that the process for each of us is highly individualized. It's all figured out. And I was thinking that I see Paul McLean is on. Highly logarithmic way. He could explain what that means better than I can, or a logarithm. All right, going on. So this is a course in mind training. We have to have mind training. We have to be retrained, if you will, because we have been thinking fearfully, and we need to start thinking miraculously. We could say we have to start thinking lovingly, would be the same thing, rather than selfishly. The ego is basically selfish. We move out of that, we start becoming more loving and giving, and then life really opens up for us. Just a bit about what the ego is. There's lots of definitions of the ego in the course. One of them is that the ego is a wrong-minded attempt to perceive ourselves as we wish to be rather than as we are. Again, as we are, who you are already the Christ. You have always been the Christ. You're a part of God. We just read that a moment ago. And so that's what we're awakening to. We're coming back to that memory, because like the prodigal son, we've wandered off, we've gotten lost, and we're yet to come to the realization, I could go home. It's the prodigal son's revelation. I can go home. And I can say, Father, I've sinned against you and before heaven. And what Father says is nothing. All the Father says is, get a gold ring and put it on his finger, get some sandals and put him on his feet. My son was lost. He's been found. He was dead. He's back to life again. And what we would say that in terms of our own, so we've been sleeping, he's awake. He's come back awake again. That's the only thing that really matters. So the Course says, when your body and your ego and your dreams are gone, you will know that you will last forever. That's the when your body, okay, that's the body. We're all going to lose the body. There's no way around that. We're getting older now. We're maintaining health into a longer period of time. But essentially, we're all going to drop that. But along with dropping the body, there's also the ego and the ego's dream. So the ego is this thing that we identify with. I have sometimes said, and people sort of cringe at it a little bit, that there won't be a John Mundy in heaven. That's true, because it's not about, that's a label for a body. If you got no body, you don't need the label. It's not about labels. It's not about ranks and status and geography. It's not about any of that kind of stuff. It's our occupations or anything. It's about being back into the heart of God again. So when the body's gone and the ego's gone and the dreams are gone, the dreams are what the ego has, these dreams that it keeps making up. And you all understand what that is, right? But the dreams are part of the illusion too, right? You will know that you will last forever. Perhaps you think this is accomplished through death, but nothing is accomplished through death, because death is nothing. Everything is accomplished through, here's the same word again, life. Life's the important thing. And life, I might add, the Course says that God is life. And every religion in the world says God is love. So God is love and God is life. And I might also add that God is, following another L, light. Light, love, life. It all comes down to the same thing. Let me start the sentence over. Everything is accomplished through life. Life is of the mind and in the mind. So it's the mind that matters, because the mind is the thing, is that thinking energy part of us. The material thing, the body, is going to go away. The mind does not go away. The Course actually says that the mind is the activating agent of spirit. So from that standpoint, we can kind of compare mind and spirit. What those have in common is that it's invisible. It does not have a form. We're trying to talk about something here which is formless. Ego understands form very well. We understand the outside. A very important line also from the Course, there's nothing outside of you. There's nothing outside, meaning there's nothing external. It's not about perception. What the Course is all about, it's about knowledge and understanding who we are in truth, not in material form, but in spiritual form, in eternity. The body neither lives nor dies because it cannot contain you or our life. It contains it only in a temporal way. In other words, a time-bound perspective. Heaven is not time-bound. In this world, there's time. And because there's time, there's also levels and degrees. Once we pass beyond time, the Course calls time a vast illusion. Time is where the story is. Time is where the drama is. Time is where the soap opera is. It's the stuff that, again, that's going on the news, right? That looks like what we would call reality. And the fact is, it's just a story. It's just a drama. And there's always a story going on. We look at politics now, we think how incredible this story is. Well, go back to the time of, say, Theodore Roosevelt. There was a lot going on then too. It was a different story. One of the big differences between now and then, there were no TVs, or everything happened in newspapers, which took a lot longer to digest. So the Course says that this is a required course. Only the time you take it in is voluntary. So it's up to us. When are we going to do this? It's interesting, this word required course. So there's no way around it. I mean, there's all kinds of pathways and different kinds of courses that we could take. But in the long run, eventually, it all comes down to the same. The Course says that there are thousands, many thousands of different pathways back to God again. And it really doesn't make any difference which path you're on. It could be a Buddhist path, a Hindu path, a Christian path, a Muslim path. The path doesn't matter. What matters is that we apply ourselves to doing the principles that are being called for in order for us to awaken. I think that we're very fortunate to have a course in miracles here at the end of the 20th century, the beginning of the 21st century, because what makes it different than a lot of other paths, it is very highly psychologically sophisticated. You read the course and it's talking about depression, it's talking about reaction formation, it's talking about all kinds of psychological terms which would not even have been known 100 years ago, let's say, or very little known. Not the average person wouldn't have that as a part of their vocabulary. So the second part here is, whenever you offer a miracle to another, you are shortening the suffering of both of you. This corrections retroactively as well as progressively. So I think one of the ways that we can understand this, we could say, whenever you offer love to another, real love, sincere love, we're giving the love away. That's what's important thing. Then that begins to correct everything. Retroactively means that it clears up the past. It clears up the unforgiveness. The starters, we can let that go now because the love is here. So what do I need to be holding on to grievances for? Stuff in the past, as well as progressively, it means it's going to be easier for me to be more alive and more loving in each of my interactions as I move into the future. So remember, no one is where he is by accident. So the course is very clear. This is a school, a classroom. We're going to talk more about that a little bit later too. And the classroom that you're in, the school that you're in, it's no accident that that's the one that you're in. Chance plays no part in God's plan. So even when there's an adjustment, here's one of the ways that I like to think about it. Let's say, in a way, there are two plans. Now, actually, there's only one plan, but let's say that there's two plans. There's God's plan and there's your plan. So God's plan, this is straight is the way, narrow is the gate that leads into life. It's right here. It's very clear. All you got to do is follow this path. Then you've got your path. And now this may kind of coincide, or it may kind of be going off here to the left or the right, or kind of wandering around and getting lost in different areas. But eventually it comes back to the main road, because you have to, because this isn't working. And when you get to the point where it's not working, there's got to be another way. Enough of this insanity, then we eventually come back to home and we go in alignment with God. The whole of the course could be understood in terms of bringing the mind, the little m mind, back in line with the mind. And the mind is, of course, the mind of God, because that's actually where you are already. This part over here is dreaming. This is reality. This is a dream. I'm caught in the dream, trying to figure out how to get back here to the truth or to home once again. Let me go back and read the rest of this. It is most unlikely that changes in attitudes would not be the first step in the newly made teacher of God's training. So the first step is we got training the mind, right? So the first step is we begin to see things differently. We begin to look at things in a different way. And essentially what it means by looking at things in a different way, you're not complaining, you're not griping, you're not bitching, you're not finding fault, you're not seeing difficulties in the world. You're actually beginning to find solutions. So that's salvation. Solutions for yourself and also for others. So you can't kind of save yourself without saving others. That's really the good news, because if you're sharing this love and it's working more effectively in your relationships, then that will be seen and realized, and it helps other people to get straight as well. So why GPS? What do we need to be saved from? In traditional Christian terms, it means being delivered from sin. There's a problem with sin in that even, sin is something that we've done, we think against God, but it's against the other people. And even when you say that you have forgiveness is an important concept in Christianity, the truth of the matter is, if we continue to hold hard feelings, somebody once said to me, and I'm sure you've heard this before, I can forgive, but I can't forget. Well, obviously, if you can't forget, you really have not forgiven, because that means you're holding on to it. Real forgiveness would mean I let it go so completely it has no effect in my mind at all anymore, right? So in Course terms, we're not talking about sin. Course means deliverance from illusion, the illusion of the ego. And if I let go of the illusion of the ego, if I think that my not forgiving is justified, that's also letting go of my insanity. Right? So of course, says that sin is the grand illusion underlying all the ego's grandiosity. You cannot do something against God simply because, well, very frankly, God doesn't have an ego. If God doesn't have an ego, how could you do something against it? Doesn't affect God. God sees us always as his children. And look at the patriarchal kinds of language that I just used. It's an image. It's just a good image that we think of someone who is ahead of us in time and as the father, and who is loving. Use mother if you prefer. It's still the same thing. The parent, the one who guides, guards, protects, is there. Right? So let's go back to a quote. Your mind can be possessed by illusions, but spirit is eternally free. That's the good part. So the mind obviously can be possessed by illusions. Look around. There's a lot of illusion going on all the time. But spirit is forever free. Spirit doesn't get limited down into this delimited place of littleness. It says, if a mind perceives without love, it perceives an empty shell, and it's unaware of the spirit within. Right? But the atonement restores spirit to its proper place. We're going to be talking more about what atonement essentially is in the simplest format. Letting go, it's undoing. Of course, it says that very clearly. Undoing. So it's a process of purification, undoing, cleansing, letting go. Principle number 7 from the 50 Miracles principles. Miracles are everyone's right, but purification is necessary first. So first we start by cleaning house, by cleaning our own house. When Jesus in the gospel says, a man's enemies are those of his own house, he's not talking about our brothers and our sisters and our parents. He's talking about those of this house, the house that's our own mind. That's where the enemy is in terms of whatever it is that we're seeing in the world. So the Course is all about, I could use that phrase a lot of different times and it would come out some different way, but the Course is all about seeing, but seeing in a different way. It's actually about not the seeing that happens with the eyes, but vision. The Course calls it the vision of Christ. The vision of Christ is such that the only thing which is seen is also loved. So the definition of Jesus that appears in the Course, I refer to this frequently. Jesus is a man who sees the face of Christ, in all of his brothers and sisters, and remembers God. How does he remember God? By seeing the face of Christ in all of his brothers and sisters. He sees it, it's there, it boomerangs, everything comes back. Whatever we put out is coming back our way. We put anger out to the world, don't expect a good response to anger. We put love out to the world, well, it's really hard for you to love somebody and then not love you back. In the last line, the mind that serves spirit is invulnerable. That's bringing our mind back to the mind. Lesson 99 from the Course says, salvation is my only function here. What we're saving is the self that we are from the self that we seem to be. We're letting go of the false self so that we can get back to the real self. Who you've always been, who you already are, who you continue to be, you don't actually lose that self at all, but if we are trapped in this world, this is a dream world. We're dreaming another dream. And sometimes our dreams are not very happy dreams in terms of the kind of things that are going on in our lives. We're waking from that dream, remember who we are in truth as a son of God, daughter of God, child of God, already whole, already complete. And that's the process. This is the path that the Course is leading us on. Going back to reading, salvation and forgiveness are the same, because again, it's just a matter of letting go of the insanity. They both imply that something has gone wrong. Otherwise, what do you need to be saved from? So, salvation implies that there was something to be saved from. Something to be saved from, forgiven for, something amiss that needs a corrective change, something apart or different from the will of God. A couple more, and then I'm going to break into discussion. So the question, who is the you that are living in this world? And I just sort of made this little thing up. Who directs the body and the things it does each day? Who utters all the words you say? Does a fault-finding ego relish a fight? Or does compassion and love encourage your sight? That's the kind of direction it's trying to take us in. Now, I think that I'm going to stop at this point and go into gallery view, because it's just a slight shift in topic coming up, and this might be a good time to come back. I've thrown a lot at you, so now the ball is, I like to say, in your court, and it's looking for you to just whatever you'd like to share. All right. I love it.
Lynn has something to share. And I would again encourage everyone to go into gallery view at this point in the upper right-hand corner. Click on your screen and click on gallery view.
Namaste, mighty companions. It's wonderful to be here. I figured since no one else raised their hand, I could read my poem.
That's true, read your poem.
Yeah, and I was okay. I was wondering how I can share what I've been blessed with, and so I wrote this poem. It's called "Share Taste Buds." Who do you think you are? You have no love to give. Ego, the bully, needs its say. I am on fire with grace and joy. How can love not be spread? I part ego's shadow and trust the flow. I need doubt nothing in God's plan for salvation. As I savor, I am received.
Thank you, Lynn. As always, very right on.
Thank you.
Who else? I see at least one philosophy professor on the screen. May have some observations. Bud, did you want to say something? No.
Well, you've been talking about GPS for a long time, John, and I remember the very first time, quite a long time ago, when you talked about it, and it made me think about the concept for weeks thereafter, and going back into the Course and looking at this notion of, where is my internal GPS? Am I actually thinking about that as my ultimate direction? When we use our car GPS or our phone GPS, it's getting us to a physical location, but we're talking about a spiritual destination here, and that this is the journey without distance. And it's kind of an interesting paradox that I'm on a path that has no distance, and it's to the destination that has never changed.
Right.
And it's always here within me. And if I'm opening up my heart and I'm recognizing that this is the distance right here from head to heart, that's the Course. That's where I'm going. And it becomes an interesting reflection for me as I go throughout my day, and I And I realign myself and I go, am I moving in that right direction?
Right. That's what the Course is trying to get us to do, to be attentive to that, to look at that and to say, and do I like the results that I'm getting in the world? And if I don't like the results that I'm seeing in the world, then maybe something should change. And the only thing that can change is my mind about how I see that. So the whole Course, as you just were saying, is really just about waking up. You know, it's about realization. It's not about doing anything in particular, although if I'm awake, then I'm going to respond to the world differently. I'm not going to attack it. I'm not going to fight it. And I think that's one of the most important things that you just, if you notice any kind of antagonism coming up in your own mind, you think there's something wrong out there that needs to be fixed, stop right there. Yeah, stop right there and think, how can I see this differently? How would God see this? How does Jesus would see this? There would be nothing but love that would be given out, right? So Jane, you're asking, how can you speak more about how salvation and forgiveness are the same? Yes, in the sense of it's letting go of the insanity of my own perspective so that I can bring my alignment of my mind back with the mind, which is always only loving. It's that simple. It's only always loving. That is the only possible response that I can have in any given situation. The ego is an antagonist. There's nothing antagonistic about love. Right? It doesn't mean that you can't offer direction in some loving way, as a parent might do for a child, but that requires some balance. I mean, you know, really knowing how to do that effectively, right? It's not always easy, but it can be done. Or an employer dealing with an employee that's not quite doing their job. How do you do that in a way that's going to be loving and that will be received that way, rather than going off into some sort of insanity? Jane, that's fine.
Janet, Janet had a question, but before we get to Janet, Lorena pointed something out that she wanted you to explore, John. So basically, we have to lose the self to be the capital S self.
Yes, that's simple. Janet.
Brought to mind two things that the Course says is that in reality, we have no enemies. So then that could make our ego part of our journey on the way home. In other words, pointing to what we don't want to think and do. And so a helpmate.
A helpmate, is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yeah. A helpmate in the sense of, like the antagonist that helps us to wake up and pay attention.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, in that sense, it makes sense. Yeah. But it's a matter of seeing it that way, that my enemy is my best friend. If it's someone that makes me pay attention, you know, and one of the things that really you need to look at, think about somebody who, let's say, criticizes you, all right? That's a good friend. Now, they could be crazy, but there may be something that you really need to look at there. You know, it might really be a time when you want to kind of stop, rather than just having a kind of knee-jerk reaction and response, is why did this person say this? Is there any truth in there? Maybe there's some truth in there. Maybe there's something that I could change inside my psyche that would help to improve things. That's the real meaning of doing unto others as you would have others do unto you. All right? Takes a lot of work to do that, but that's perfectly possible. Who else?
Angela had a question. Could
All
you
right.
talk more about the process of letting go, the ego perspective, once you've realized you've chosen wrongly and asked the Holy Spirit for help to see things differently?
Well, it depends on what letting go is going to mean. In relationship, it might mean letting go of your anger, your attack thoughts, but demonstrating your own willingness to heal. There's different, see, the Course talks about special relationships. We have all different kinds of special relationships. One of the most special relationships that we have is the relationship we all have with our bodies. That's a special, special relationship because we are so identified with this thing. So I may be wanting to let go of the extra weight that this body has that I'm carrying around. That may not be necessary. I want to keep it healthy. I might be needing to let go of an addiction of some sort. You know, so much I think it's really just a matter of cleaning house. So by cleaning house, I mean, maybe I need to look at my financial situation. And if I get debt stuff going on, maybe I could fix that so that that's not going to be such a problem and a worry and anxiety for me. What do I need to do that? Just all the different dimensions of whatever it is out there we have relationships with. How can I be sure that that relationship is in balance? I think balance is a really good term, right? And clear so that it's not taking the peace of mind away from me. I like to say, don't let anything take the peace of God away from you. So where is my peace being taken away from? What am I thinking about? Where does my mind kind of want to go into insane thinking? Well, what can I do to clean that up? There may be a lot of, maybe asking for forgiveness from someone that you may not even think it's necessary, but it may be necessary if things aren't working out quite right. I mean, you sit down, you really honestly say, let's talk, let's be clear. I think one of the most important things in marriage, for example, is communication, and really be clear with each other about what's happening in that dialogue between the two of you. Any way that that's happening, just keep it clear. Who else? Oh, Loretta. Hi, Loretta. Where's Loretta at?
Press down on your
unmute
space bar.
yourself. You can just hold your space bar down, Loretta. And just talk as long as you got it hold. There you go.
Does it work? Yes. Oh, okay. Good trick. I every time I read it, yesterday I thought that I keep hearing that the answer is in my brother or in the person in front of me, and that's always the answer. It's nowhere else. And I really don't want to hear that because it's like forgiveness, and why do I have to do it when they're the ones that caused this, and back and forth. And then I get down to, and really, God, if you wanted me to be this good, why don't you do it for me? And it's
put it off on the God, right?
Anyway, just a thought on the whatever. Thank you.
I got it. So there's a line in the Course which says that, quote, whoever is saner at the time, whoever is saner at the time should be the one that offers the process of healing the mind in relationship, right? So you may both be insane, but at least so you've studied the Course well enough to know that what you need to do is redirect your mind so that you can be more effective in that particular relationship. So you do it. It actually always comes down to you, meaning me or whoever it is. If I'm the student of the Course in Miracles and I understand a little bit more about how the mind works, then I want to follow the principles that this Course is teaching. Right? Don't expect the other person to be there. The other person is likely to come along if you're there and you're being loving. It's very hard to be loving to somebody and they're not being love you back. They may not, but it's harder for them to do it if you're there and attentive, right? Anybody else? All right, so
Angela,
go ahead.
Actually, Mercy had her hand up. Go ahead, Mercy.
Mercy, hi,
Get
Mercy.
back to this question in a moment. You'll press your
Hold
space.
hold the space bar down, Mercy, and that's the best way. Go ahead. There you go.
Okay. In the beginning, you had on your screen where it says, God's plan for your salvation could not have been established without your will and your consent. It must have been accepted by the Son of God, for what God wills for him he must receive. And what really came for me with that is that it's really asking us for that decision. Do we believe that we given our consent and our will is the same as God? Because it comes down to that all the time. Is our will and God's will are one?
That's right.
And so for me, the question is always, well, do I agree with God? And it's not that it's asking me for my agreement, but it's that consent. And just like what it says about the course, either you're going to believe the course in its entirety or you don't.
Right.
And so the question is always, do I believe that this is truth? And I do. And so whenever that happens, then all decisions are easy because you believe it from the very beginning that it's true. So so my I guess what I want to say is that God's plan for salvation is the plan that I'm following, because that is the only plan that I know it's true.
You nailed it. That's very clear, Mercy. God, that's right. You got it. You got to bring the alignment of the mind with the mind.
Right.
And you agree that God's smarter than you are.
Yeah, and I agree by letting go of my plan so that I can then allow God's word to be written on my life and on the situations that I'm seeing and all the relationships that I have. And it's God's word that's on there and not mine. And so it's the letting go of my being right and my following my own individualized plan.
Well, that's once we get the alignment, then your will and God's will is the same will.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the wonderful part about this whole thing, is that once both of the wills are the same will, and it's always been that way, actually. I mean, that's why, the Course in Miracles, when you get back home, you recognize you never left.
Yeah. And that's why the gate is narrow. It's narrow because there's only one voice. When we think that there are so many voices and so many shadows and so many interpretations, that's when the gate is wide, because you're listening to so many different things, including the ego's thinking. But when it's narrow, the narrow part is the idea that there's only one voice and there's only one path. It is narrow because it's so focused.
Right. That's the focus and the balance again. It's back to that same thing. Mercy always has a clear observation of this. So you teach the course in Tampa, right? Yeah. Anybody else? I think we're going to break for do our 10-minute break in about 5 more minutes. So I won't go back into trying to do a presentation. We'll just have 5 more minutes of dialogue, then we'll take a 10-minute break, then we'll come back and then I'll present another, play 20 minutes or more. But in the meantime, we got 5 minutes to just whoever.
I'd like to make a comment.
Why not, sir?
So one of the things that we've kind of spoken of, and this is a little bit towards Angela's question as well, is what do we do when an egoic thought arises? How do we handle that? We've all had them. There's 2 concepts that I use that I find helpful. First of all, I have to realize the Course talks about the authority issue a lot. And for me to put my head around the authority issue, what I realized was that the ego has a demand to be right. It is the essence of righteousness, if you will. And when I find righteousness rising up in me, I have to kind of catch that. I have to realize that's not the truth of who I am. The only thing, if you will, that is right is love. And when we look through that lens, we start to realize if I feel resistance to another, if I feel righteousness rising up in me, both of those are just two sides of the same egoic view of the world. And then I can kind of catch myself in the act, which the Course asks us to do over and over again, catch myself in the act and choose again. And have a different approach perhaps with this person at this time. And maybe in a particular situation, if I'm really hot under the collar or really feeling whatever in that moment, creating a little space and then coming back to that later might be really helpful. So it's a process of recognizing first and foremost that, somehow ego came into my thinking. And I'm now not truly in alignment with this notion of looking through the lens of love.
Very good, Lynn. Thanks. The Course says that the ego uses the body with three major intentions. One is for the purpose of attack. We're very good at attack in thought, word, and deed. The ego knows a lot about attack. One of the major things I say a lot is, if nothing else, just do not attack. Just understand you never attack. It's just not the right. It doesn't mean that you wouldn't protect your body through his attack, but that means you don't attack. Right? Attack pleasure. Okay? So the ego uses the body for pleasure. Now, there's nothing wrong with pleasure, but if I'm going after pleasure, pleasure is very easily overrun, and then I get an addiction going on, or I eat too much food. That becomes a problem for me. Whatever the Course says, ask for pleasure. When you ask for pleasure, receive pain, meaning that you overdid it. You go too far with it. It's no longer pleasurable. Now it becomes a painful thing for you, right? And then the third thing is attack pleasure pride. Take a lot of pride in this body, this name, this identity. I'm a captain, I'm a lieutenant, I'm a whatever it is. One of the students in our class on Tuesday night, just this last week, mentioned something about he was a teacher. He is a teacher, and he had gone into the school, and he didn't have his mask on, right? He never had to, and a janitor yells at him, "Put your mask on." Right? And he thinks, well, you're just a janitor. I'm a teacher. I'm like it makes a difference. None of this, that's the insanity of the ego. I mean, he realized he caught himself. He's a student, of course, but just to see that coming up in him, right? That this person who's below me should be telling me what to do. That's crazy. That's the insanity of the ego. Fortunately, he's sane enough to realize that he made the mind's crazy that way.
John, can I ask you a question?
Sure, dear.
When ego comes to me, it's always in the form of anger, and it's usually anger towards me.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we're always angry at ourselves first.
And my ego's a bully.
No, it's a bully. Most everybody is a bully. It's a nag. Right? It's a nag. Yeah, like, why don't you? Why did you? Yeah, what did you leave us a mess for? Why don't you? All those guilt tripping ourselves is a major mechanism for the ego. So then you got to really look at that and think, well, is there something that I could really clean up here? Is something I could do, or is it really is it a matter of forgiving myself?
What's the lesson in this?
It may just be forgiving myself that really needs to be done, and practicing what I. All right. I like that. Was it lesson 268? let all things be exactly as they are, which is sometimes difficult to do. But just let things be what they are. Seek not to make a beloved an enemy. Okay, we're back, everyone. Anybody got any questions or observations before we jump into anything occurred to you while you were in the closet?
I just want to say trust is the first characteristic of a teacher of God.
It is.
I got to keep remembering that.
Scott, was your hand up or were you just adjusting something?
No, yes. I had a thought, I was thinking about what you had said about the ego's attack, pleasure, and pride. And I was just thinking about how, like, you know, in the daily moments of our lives, there's ample opportunity to express the ego. Really in every moment there's an opportunity, but then I was thinking that, well, if that's the case, then there's ample opportunity to express love.
Exactly. Sure.
But, you know, it's like the path, you know, it's the narrow path versus the wide path. And so it's easy to take the wide path.
Right. So much of it is just a matter of redirecting the mind. So what's that part of my mind that can bring me back into, that's the decision maker thing, that bring me back into seeing correctly. As Angela says at the bottom of the screen, the ego always speaks first. That's true. The ego always does speak first. So if the ego speaks first, then you kind of want to watch and see, and loudest, and then see what's my alternative here. There must be another way. That's Bill's turning to Helen that gets the whole Course in Miracles side. There must be another way. Well, of course there has to be another way. Okay, I'm going to go back into sharing some slides and doing some dialoguing, and then we'll break again after a while.
And I again recommend that people move into speaker view so that when John is presenting, you'll see him as well as the slide.
So let's talk a little bit now about our wandering in the world. The Course is teaching about us about a path across, in Hinduism and Buddhism, tradition is what's called a yana, or a raft, through which we pass our way through the ocean of samsara. Samsara meaning this process of wandering the world through various incarnations. And in that sense, also aimlessly kind of drifting and dreaming and roving or mundane existence. And for a lot of folks, that's what's going on. I mean, there's a bit of an awareness that it's a dream, but it's just like the diurnal process of the daily doing whatever it is you got to do, but not with very much satisfaction, not with all love in your heart. A friend told me once that her husband actually hates himself and hates the world. And he said he'd kill himself, but he doesn't have the courage to do it. In the meantime, he just has to put up with living this life. So he puts up with it, but he's not enjoying it at all. So he just kind of overeats and he watches TV, and nothing is really satisfactory. That's why what's exciting about the Course, in part, is that it is so deep, and you can just keep going deeper and understanding it better. I hope that if you've done the workbook lessons, that you start the workbook lessons again, and you see they will take you even deeper. We're all going deeper until that day when we actually reach enlightenment. Now, who among us is enlightened? You know, that's quite a step. If you could actually say that, actually be there, probably you would not say that. I think that Bill Thetford had completed the atonement, but I don't think he would have said that. And I think that Ken Wapnick had completed the atonement, but I don't think Ken would have said that. But there's just this sense about their presence, about kind of being there. One of the things I was thinking recently about that the two of them had in common was that Bill was a minimalist. By that I mean the less the better. And in some ways, Ken was a minimalist too. There may have been, he had a big place, etc. But in his own personal life, I mean, the first time I went to Ken's apartment in New York City, I was really surprised at how minimalistic it was. I remember going into the bathroom, there was a towel and a toothbrush, and that was it. That's kind of the way it was throughout his apartment. Of course, he was thinking about going out and becoming a monk at that point. And he could have done that. He was really sincere about that. But once he got the course, that was the whole new pathway for him. And that he did with amazing perspicacity and concentration and focus. It's just absolutely amazing. So of course, as you travel, but in dreams while safe at home. And so we travel in our dreams, our daydreaming as well as our nighttime dreams. Right? All the time, we never left heaven. We're still there. And I think one of the things that's going to happen to all of us once we let go of this body and we kind of look back on this life and think that life will then seem like a dream. Doesn't your childhood seem like a dream right now? It's like something that happened on a land far, far away. There was a little girl named Rose, and she had certain kinds of experiences, but that land is a long ways away, and it seems very dreamlike. So one of the things that we find in understanding the whole process of awakening, if there's a road, if there's a path, then there is a journey. It's just a metaphor for us to understand, but it's a good metaphor. And some of the books that I've been most impressed with over the course of time, one of them was Pilgrim's Progress. I don't know if any of you ever read Pilgrim's Progress by John Bunyan. I read that back in 1971. Actually, it's really interesting thing about Pilgrim's Progress. It was #1 in sales in books next to the Bible until the beginning of the 20th century. So throughout the 19th century and 18th century, it was the best-selling book. It was published in 1668. And it was required reading in school, in Protestant schools. So it was required reading in Protestant. That's why it was so popular. Everybody it was about a journey of a guy named Christian, and Christian is going someplace, and he has these companions that he meets along the way, and he goes through these difficult periods of sloth, of despondency, the valley of humiliation. But this is all part of the learning, all part of the journey of the process of waking up. So this is going to be true for each and every one of us. We may go through things and you think, why I have to go through this divorce, but I've got to go through this divorce. Or I've got to go through this bankruptcy. I've got to go through this difficult job, whatever it is. But it's a part of the waking up process that's there for you or for me or for whoever's going through it. It's so helpful to look at it as a journey. Or I think back during the 70s, 80s, and into the early 90s, I really enjoyed reading the Don Juan Carlos Castaneda stories, because those were all about a journey that was going on as well, right? Going somewhere. And there's others, but always it means awaking at some point. The school, this is a necessary school. This road, there's a necessary road. This is why I'm on the road. Sometimes it may appear as though one is actually in prison. Of course, as everyone is seeking to escape from the prison he has made, and the way to find release is not denied him. Being in him, he has found it. This is Sing Sing. I taught at Sing Sing from 82 through 88. And I always thought it was interesting when you drive up to the gate, it's a Sing Sing correctional facility. And I used to think, wouldn't that be nice? I mean, wouldn't it be nice if this really was a place for correction? There's very little correction that occurs at Sing Sing. It's mostly just a place of confinement. And that's it. So, but we all have our prisons that we make. There's a line in the course, lesson 57 says, I made up the prison in which I see myself. What is a trap that I have? Is a trap, and maybe it's a relationship that I feel trapped in, or the body I feel trapped in, or a job I feel trapped in, or whatever it is. The course says, nothing made by a child of God is without power. It is essential to realize this, because otherwise you'll be unable to escape the prison you have made. There's a power, there's a way out, and that way out is through the mind and through the training of the mind to see differently. I begin to see differently, I can change things. So sometimes I like to say this world is a reformatory or a school or a mental hospital. So we try out different things and we wonder why we have to go through that. But then you look back at what happened after years have gone by and you think, oh, I had to do that. I had to do that to wake up. I had to do that to understand what I need to understand. There's an interesting line, of course, is the world was over long ago, which really means that the dream was over long ago. But because you're already home and you never left home. That's why this is, again, a dream. It's so helpful to be able to see that, because if you see that it's a dream, then you don't have to take it quite so seriously. It doesn't mean you don't respond to it. It doesn't mean you don't take things seriously. But you get to the point where the course says you get above the battlefield. You get above the battlefield and you look down the game, you look down the play, you see what's going on, and you realize you don't have to play. One of Ken's favorite lines that he would use with people that he was counseling with was, stay out of the sandbox. Stay out of the sandbox. Don't get in there and start throwing sand around. You get in there and start throwing sand around, then you're all caught in it. It's like you've been caught in a spider's web or something. It sticks on you and you can't quite get out of it. I was doing counseling with someone not too long ago. And as they were describing their situation, I said, you know, I really think you should just slowly back away from this and leave this alone. There's a saying in Taoism, muddy water let stand will clear. Muddy water let stand will clear. That's true, just leave it alone. It will clear itself, but it's going to be hard to clear. Sometimes it's not your job to fix things. It's not your job to fix it. You know, let's let the process itself fix it. Sometimes fixing it means getting mucked up in it, and then you got a big mess that you can't really clear up so easily. So back to our quote. It says, God's plan for salvation could not have been established without your will and consent. We had that earlier. It must have been accepted by the Son of God. For what God wills for him, he must receive. For God wills not apart from him, nor does the will of God wait upon time to be accomplished. Therefore, what joined the will of God must be in you now, being eternal. It's always there, and it's always has been there. So again, this is just a matter of realization. It's a matter of knowledge. It's a matter of waking up. So what the Course is trying to do is trying to teach us how to adopt a new kind of thinking, which the Course refers to as miracle-mindedness. If I have miracle-mindedness, then I'm going to really look upon all things again with love. That's the miracle in and of itself, that I look upon all things in love. So, to quote the Course, you do not guard your thoughts carefully enough. You may feel at this point that it would take a miracle to enable you to do this. This is perfectly true. If you're not used to miracle-minded thinking, but you can be trained to do that way. So it's true, we're training on, that's what the workbook is for. The workbook has helped us to process this information consistently. That's a very important concept, consistently. Day after day, I keep cooking is another alchemical term. I keep cooking it. I keep going over with it. I keep keeping it deeper and refining the process so that I don't just have insights here and insight there, I'm able to hold this awareness of love with consistency 24/7, regardless of what's going on. So at the end of this quote says, all miracles workers need this kind of training. So miracle mindedness means right-mindedness. And we come to right-mindedness through the process of the atonement. Again, this is simply the process of undoing or letting go or cleansing or giving up or relinquishing stuff that I just don't need. We need to be in our right minds in order to overcome guilt. Now, guilt is the big problem in the Course in Miracles. Guilt is what I think Lynn was talking about a while ago. It's carrying this around. It's being angry with yourself. And that's not going to help the situation at all. The best way to get out of it all, suggest in a moment, is just to literally get up and do something, move, clear up things, and things, clean house. Again, I keep using clean house. It's a good analogy. Putting things in order, straightening things out is going to make me feel much better. It feels much better if I'm living in a clean house. Right-mindedness is the willingness to think things over. We elect wrong-mindedness or right-mindedness. So we've got this elective process. The Course calls this the decision maker, or the Charlie, the chooser. It's what is that makes a decision, and can I consistently make decisions that work in favor with the will of God? And don't tell me you don't know what the will of God is. You do know what the will of God is, and we know that it's the loving path. So if I say I don't know, I'm just avoiding the truth. It doesn't take much to know what the right response is. The problem is, the Course says that no man can serve two masters, for he will hate the one and love the other, or else he'll be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. That's from Matthew, the Gospel of Matthew. It's exactly the same thing that the Course in Miracles is saying. We can't serve God and the ego both. We have to decide which path, what voice are we going to listen to? Where it says, how simple is God's plan for salvation? There is but one response to reality, for reality evokes no conflict at all. In fact, it's one of the benefits of making the right choice is you will feel good about it. You will recognize that you have made the right decision. There is but one teacher of reality who understands what it is. That, of course, is the guidance of the Holy Spirit. He does not change his mind about reality because reality does not change. So God does not change. There's no evolution in heaven, as I mentioned earlier. Evolution is something which occurs in time, which happens to be, by the way, the reason that we are in time. We're in time, in this world, in order to learn a lesson. We chose to come here. We chose to step into this classroom and to go through these lessons. So the best thing I can do is learn the lesson I came here to do so that I can graduate. And once I graduate, then I get to move on beyond the classroom. So salvation, of course, is the end of dreams. Well, what kind of dreaming do you have going on? I'm not asking anybody to answer that question. It's just like, where does the insanity go? Where does the dream go? Who awakes in heaven could dream. Who awake in heaven could dream that there could ever be need of salvation. That's sort of interesting idea. It's just like, as I think I said earlier, think of what happens if you are gone. You're out of here. You've completed the process. The body has been laid down, and you're now home again. Then won't this whole thing just seem like a dream? The logic of the world must lead to nothing, for its goal is nothing. If you decide to be nothing except a dream, you must direct your thoughts into oblivion. Do you not feel, do you not see sometimes that it's very much like you're dreaming as you're walking through the world? Is there anything that you can do to wake that up? to help to wake yourself up. The Course says this is an insane world, and do not underestimate the extent of its insanity. There's no area of your perception is not touched. No area of perception is not touched. And your dream is sacred to you, whatever that sacredness may be. That is why God placed the Holy Spirit in you, where you placed the dream. We're trying to understand the dream. One of the things that's often used in psychology is the study of dreams. That was one of Freud's great discoveries. The dream is telling us something. So if I look at the dream, I see what it's telling me, that I have some idea about what's needed in order to awaken from the dream. Of course, as God's plan is simple, never circular, never self-defeating. He has no thought except the self-extending. The self-extending, capital S, right? So the self-extending is that I just continue to keep loving. I keep repeating it, but that's the whole process. As I continue to keep loving and extending that love, that is, as I said earlier, curative. It's curative of all of the relationships. Let me go back and read this over again. God's plan is simple, never circular, never self-defeating. He has no thoughts except the self-extending, and in this your will must be included. Thus, there must be a part of you that knows. That's what I was just saying. There must be a part of you that knows this already, and therefore can adopt it, knows his will, and shares it. So the Course says, ours is simply the journey back to God, who is our home. Whenever fear intrudes anywhere along the road to peace, it's because the ego has attempted to join the journey. So we're on a journey. We're going home. Home is heaven. Heaven is home. And we may get to pick up this companion along the way, we inevitably do, that we call the ego. And how do we deal with this? Jesus says in the Course, on this journey you have chosen me as your companion instead of the ego. It's really a good idea to, with consistency, again, there's that word, consistency, see that Jesus, or called the Holy Spirit, is my companion. This is the companion that I want, and I want to follow this guidance. That's why this is one of the things that makes A Course in Miracles different than some of the other spiritual directive processes that are out there. What makes a difference is the reliance upon this other voice, the voice for God, the guide. You're not in this alone. You don't have to figure it out by yourself. You've got a book, you've got a workbook, and you've got the inner teacher. At any point, turn to the inner teacher and say, help. I need guidance. And then if you do that and you get quiet, one of the things that's very often happen is that you get very clear guidance about which way to go. You look at the temptation and you realize it's a temptation, and you realize that the choice is no. Another thing that I like to emphasize, because I think it's important, at least it's been important for me, is watching the thoughts as you wake up in the morning. And you're laying there and you're not quite awake, you're not out of bed yet, you've got a little bit of time. If you deliberately do it, so you don't have to jump and run. If you jump and run, then you don't have a chance for this. Deliberately do it so you can look there and see what kind of guidance is coming. The mind is quiet, you've had time to be still, you've not caught up in the day yet in the activities. So this is a really good time to just watch your thoughts and see if you're not getting some very clear guidance. I was just talking about the importance of having a guide, and the Holy Spirit is the guide. That doesn't mean that there aren't other guides in life too, that you can, a physical guide, a person. Helen was my guide in the very beginning, and then when Helen died, Ken kind of took over. I was lucky in that sense, and I always believed them. I always trusted They knew exactly how to provide guidance in a way that was going to be very, very helpful. This whole idea of a guide being there occurs in most all the kind of mystic journey literature. Somebody comes along to help the student, the seeker, out in this pathway. And this is Obi-Wan Kenobi, of course, who was for Luke Skywalker back in 1977. It was. So the Holy Spirit is this guy. The only part of the Holy Trinity that has a symbolic function. The symbolic function is this direct guidance. He's referred to as the healer, the comforter, the guide. He's also described as something separate and apart from the Father and the Son. This looks like that's a little bit more remote. God is. But the Holy Spirit is right here at all times. Jesus, too, is right here at all times. It doesn't make a difference whether you call it Jesus or call it the Holy Spirit. Just recognize that there is someone there that can be very, very helpful. When you choose to leave him home, he gave you a voice to speak for him because he could no longer share his knowledge with you without hindrance. When we choose to leave God, that's the home we're talking about. When we chose to leave there, like the prodigal son, we chose to leave. We chose to come into this world. We chose to go through these experiences. Direct communication was broken because you had listened to another voice, because we started listening to the ego. That's the whole Garden of Eden story. You start listening to the ego, and the next thing you know, you're out of paradise. And then you're caught in the dream. The whole idea is to awaken from this. So I think one of the interesting things, if you go to, there's so many mythic literature, fairy tales, stories, etc., which give us this whole story. Glinda, for example, the Good Witch from the Wizard of Oz, tells Dorothy and her companions, the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, and the Cowardly Lion, that they already possess what they seek. That's the same message of the Course. It's kind of fun finding the message of the Course in something like a fairy tale. The Scarecrow is smart. The Tin Man has a heart. The Lion is brave. All these things are already true. Heaven is just waiting for us to acknowledge what already is. As it says in the Wizard of Oz, you've always had the power, my dear. You just had to learn it for yourself. That is so perfect in relationship to the Course in Miracles. You've always had the power. It's just a matter of recognizing that you have the power to change. The journey to God is merely the reawakening of knowledge of what you are always and what you are forever. This is what Bud was quoting a while ago, a journey without distance to a goal that's never changed. Truth can only be experienced. In that sense, it can't even be talked about. One of the things that's characteristic of a mystical experience, if you've had a mystical experience, it's an experience. By that I mean you cannot necessarily describe it. It'd be very hard to do. It's very hard to put into words. Somebody has a near-death experience. They have a lot of trouble trying to explain what the near-death experience was about. It's an experience. Love is an experience. Real love is an experience, and you often cannot put it into words. But the thing that you do is you know it. You have knowledge of it. You have affirmation of it. You have clarity about it, and there's no doubt about it. The goal of our journey, seeing the real world. The real world is a state of mind in which, through forgiveness, the world of perception is released from the projection of guilt we place upon it. It is the mind that's changed, not the external world. We're not asking anything out there to change. That's what's really important. Things will change as I change, even if they don't change in some material way. They are changing in terms of my ability to see them correctly. The miracle makes no distinction among degrees of misperception. A misperception is a misperception. It is a device for perception correction, effective quite apart from either the degree or the direction of the error. This is its true indiscriminateness. Then the next slide I'd like to share with you is really in keeping with this whole idea, but this is not from A Course in Miracles. Notice down at the bottom. This is Jesus and speaking in Gina Lake's book. This her called Jesus Trilogy. And I think it's fun when we find stuff that is the same message to the Course from another source that's been going on forever, as I said earlier. This is Jesus speaking in her book. She's written 20 books, by the way. That's just one of the first ones. The benevolence of life is such that no matter what you choose, that choice will contribute to your evolution. Suffering ensures that, and it's how it works. Evolution has a certain trajectory. It goes toward love. I like that. Evolution is going toward love. If your choice takes you away from love, you suffer. That suffering will inevitably put you back on course. That's what the illustration earlier about the path of God and this are going off in these strange directions and not finding what we're looking for, which then eventually leads us back to the main road. You get to choose, of course, how long that will take. That's like, this is a required course, but the time you take it in is voluntary. So it can take a long time or it can take a short time, depending upon my willingness to work my way through whatever piece of insanity it is that I seem to be caught in. Where it says, without a clear-cut positive goal at the outset, the situation just seems to happen and makes no sense until it has already happened. Then you look back at it and you try to piece together what it must have meant. No goal was set with which to bring the means in line. And now, the only judgment left to make is whether or not the ego likes it. Is it acceptable or does it call for vengeance? The absence of a criterion for outcomes set in advance makes understanding doubtful and evaluation impossible. So we have this clear sense, I want to go home, I want to know what love is, I want to know what truth is, I want to be to live a life that is in balance and sane, and if that's my goal, then that's what I'll achieve. Jesus and the courses are, I do not attack your ego. I do work with your higher mind. That's the important point. The important point is there is a higher mind. So we want to work with that mind. That higher mind then can facilitate our ability to move into a higher dimension of mind. It's the home of the Holy Spirit, whether you are asleep or awake, either way. Just as your ego does with your lower mind, which is its home. I am your vigilance in this because you are too confused to recognize your own hope. I am not mistaken. I'll do one more slide and then we're going to go into discussion, and we'll be in discussion till the end of our time together. So I suggest wake up, sit up, get up, clean up, grow up, show up. Look straight at every image that rises to delay you, says the Course. The goal is inevitable because it is eternal. Look right in it, face it on, straight on. The best way is out is through, or as Churchill said, when you're going through hell, keep going. That's the way out, right? So wake up. Really just means stop sleeping, stop being unconscious. If I recognize that I'm being unconscious, I hit myself over the head with an unconscious bottle of wine. That'll do it. Something like that. Get up, feet on the floor, shoulders back, stand up, be honest, be clear. Do what you're being asked to do. Clean up. Clean up your body, your finances, your surrounding, your relationships. I said this earlier, miracles are everyone's right, but purification is necessary first. And grow up, do the work, learn the lesson, forgive everyone. There's no one that I want to leave out there that, well, I forgive everybody, but, right? Just do what the Course is asking us to do, and then show up. Help others. You're not in this planet by yourself. And here's plenty of opportunities for you to be helpful out there. Helping to heal makes me whole.
Thank you so much, John. The course is so wonderful. It's so uplifting. I've been listening to Karen Drucker. She, an amazing singer.
Hmm.
And she inspired a poem, if I could read it. It goes along with the course.
Okay.
I call it Yoga with Amazing Music of Karen Drucker. Now, one of her songs is I Light a Candle. And whenever that song comes on, I turn it up full blast. So everyone
Wow.
in my neighborhood can hear it.
Oh, good.
So
Appreciate it.
it's I light a candle for humanity. Yeah, well, anyway. Okay. Yoga, open in brilliance, divinity flows, pours on fire with love. I turn up volume to share a candle. It drips love to all that melts. In flames of grace, shadows, ash dissolves. Light breathes into itself.
It does indeed. Thank you, hon.
Thank you.
Brooke, you got your hand up. So what Brooke like to there?
You started out this last section talking like saying Ken Wapnick and maybe you or others of us would not say we were enlightened. I would guess my understanding of the course, and you tied this together like with the later part of your things, like we're doing a journey without distance. We're already home. We're already at the journey's end. We're already enlightened or something beyond that. We're knowledgeable. And my understanding of the course, it says that we make our decisions from what we see as our identity. So if we're recognizing our identity as oneness with God, or many lessons saying, I'm the light of the world, or my mind is part of God's, I'm very holy, we're already enlightened, or way beyond that. We're one with God. We're one with our source.
Right.
So it seems to me it makes sense to acknowledge. Now, I'm not always feeling this way. I come from my ego self much of the time, but lately I feel we're all enlightened. We are there. We're already at the journey's end, but we need to recognize it. And those words in the course, like Jesus says a lot of times, to recognize something or accept it. But it's like forgiveness. It seems like we make it a whole big process. So that's what I see. We made it a process of being enlightened or being one with God, but that's our identity. That's what we are. The idea is to accept that fully or realize it fully. And I'm not saying I'm there all the time, but I feel it more and more, and I sense it. That's the truth.
Okay.
We are there.
You should feel it more and more. I think that a good Course in Miracles, if you're doing the work and you're doing it steadily and consistently, you've been at it for a while, there should be that you acknowledge it within yourself that this is true. And one of the ways I like to say is that I think what should happen is that there should just be simply more and more awareness, and more and more awareness, and more and more and more awareness. And with that greater awareness comes letting the insanity go, forgiving whatever it is that needs to be forgiven, so that you're recognizing that you're in the space. But like you said, you're not recognizing you're not there all the time, but you're recognizing that it's easier to get there. And you can move there and you can stay there with greater consistency than maybe was true for you in the past. And when I said that Ken would not say that, I mean, he wouldn't bragging somewhere, but I do remember one workshop once where I don't remember exactly, but I just remember he kind of, somebody pressed him on, he said something like, it's nice. It's nice. We'll just sort of leave it at that, just like being contented, being content, that you gotta, the first step is you gotta want to be there. You gotta, you're committed. If you're committed, the commitment will lead you to contentment. I think that's a thing for a marriage. If you got the commitment, you're hanging there, you've got the consistency, and you're working to cooperate, etc., then you can also get to the contentment. And you're glad you're there. Let's have Gigi.
Okay. this is in relationship to the 5 steps you talked about: get up, clean up, grow up, and show up.
Yeah.
Rabbi Kahn wrote a letter to President Biden, and this is in relationship to our country that we're in. And he ended with this: it's time to live unhindered, uncompromised, unbound, bold, and all out on fire and mighty in the power of the living God. For thus saith the Lord, arise and shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord has risen upon you. Deep darkness shall cover the earth, but the glory of God shall rise upon you. In the name above every name that is named, the name of Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus the Messiah, the way, the truth, and the life, the King above all kings, the Lord of all, the hope of all ages, the answer to every life, the Star of Jacob, the Prince of Life, the glory of Israel, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the name that will remain above all names when it is passed away, Yeshua Jesus, the same yesterday, today, and forever. Amen. That was his conclusion to his letter to President Biden.
Amen. That's very nice. And that's pretty much right on with what we're saying. Thank you for that, Gigi.
You're welcome.
I see Lynn's hand, but let's see if there's anybody else that also wants to share. All right, Lynn, go ahead.
I just wanted to say about enlightenment. I think we're all in the light. I think the light keeps getting brighter. I don't think enlightenment can be realized by our minds. Of course, the light keeps going deeper. And yeah, that's my opinion.
Well, in course terms, there is, when Jesus recognizes that he is the Christ. So having recognized the Christ, it means that we are home again.
Yeah.
That we are back with God again. And that is the goal. And that is where we're going to. And as I said earlier, in time, there's an evolution. But once we step outside of time, there is no longer an evolution. There are no problems in heaven. There's nothing that has to be changed. There's nothing that has to be fixed. See, in this world, there's still a lot of things that have to be changed, that have to be fixed and improved. We can always improve on things, right? But not so beyond. By heaven, by definition, is a state of perfection. Of course, says that pretty clearly. And lesson 101, God's will for me is perfect happiness. Perfect happiness, not almost perfect happiness. You know, it's completely perfect happiness. That's being all the way back home again. The question is, why in the world did we ever want to leave home? And the Course of Miracles' answer to it is, you didn't. That's why it makes this. That's why it's a dream. It's a dream because you actually never left home. It's like you're sleeping in your bed at night, you're having this dream, it seems very real. These things, these events that are going on in the dream are really happening. You don't think about they're not happening. And then you wake up in the morning and you go, well, that was just a dream. All right, well, it's the same process to awaken back into the real self that we always have been. And I don't begin to want to even think about what claim that I can explain what that is, but I do understand the process. Anybody else? We got a little bit of time. Got another 8 or 9 minutes. Mercy, yeah. Mercy. But I want to say happy birthday to Mercy. It was her birthday about a week ago.
Thank you. What I want to say about enlightenment is just like what you talked about in the Course, where it says Jesus was a man who recognized the Christ in all his brothers. And in that recognition, you recognize that you share the same Father, which is God. And in that moment of oneness is when we realize we are God's son. So for me, enlightenment would be when the time comes and I experience that same recognition with all my brothers. And even the Course says you don't have to recognize in all, because the moment you recognize it fully in one brother,
Yes.
that's all that it takes, because one full recognition will enlighten the mind in the sense that then you'll know that you've always been in heaven, not in this form, and that you've never been a body, you've always been a spirit. So it's that recognition of the Christ in our brother that would be, I believe for myself, is the way.
Absolutely. That's it. And so that means in all brothers. And so there's no exception to that, especially the ones where I may think that there's some difficulty. There's no difficulty there if I can see it clearly. BG, you want to share? Kind of unmute yourself. Go ahead.
Just what Mercy said, I was going to share it. It's amazing how that could be in your mind, and then someone comes up and says the same thing that you're thinking, and it was all about Christ to Christ. In other words, I try each day to remember that
Right.
the Christ in me is going to go out and have relationship with the Christ in you, no matter what. It doesn't matter what's happening. It's just being there. And you know, it's interesting how when you do go out of that place of holiness and you're in ego, I have to say that it's getting less and less, because I'm aware when I'm in it. And I go, okay, I can do it again, choose again.
Very good.
And then there's another thing that's a lesson that it could never leave my mind. And that is, God is in everything I see, because God is in my mind. And I feel that helps me walk through life and look at things that are outside of myself, but yet they're inside of myself, because I choose to see through the eyes of God. So I don't have to walk around and feel everything is insane, but I can see it differently. In other words, we're in this world, even though it's a dream, but Jesus and God wants only happiness for us, wants joy for us. We have that was a God-given, is to be happy. And that's what he wants all of us to be. So I think somewhere there's a change in how you perceive or not perceive. Maybe it's not a perception, but it's a knowing.
There you go.
That you're not walking along. Okay, I just wanted to share that, because I don't like to share too much. I get very nervous, but I'm getting better. I'm getting better. Thank you.
And you're also very clear. And it's remarkable that you and Lynn and Mercy and all that.
Thank you.
The recognition is there. And you can see it so clearly. If there was somebody in here who wanted to fight with you, that might be a little bit harder. But I don't think there's anybody here that wants to fight. All right. Mark Rye, you got any wisdom to share with us, bro? You're
I was just thinking, you know, when I'm using a GPS in my car and how much I can sort of fully pay attention to instructions and trust that that's going to get me where I need to go. And so it's a cool metaphor for
it is
sort of in our own lives, and, you know, just trying to be aware of when I'm not listening to it, God's plan for salvation, and when I am, and trying to listen for it more. So anyway, that was just the thing I was thinking about.
Yeah, that's great. It provides this incredible this is a spiritual direction. And we're just following the spiritual direction. How nice it is that we have this book, this process that Helen was willing to write it down for us. Yep. Anybody else? Well, we are near the end of our time. If anybody wants to hang around and just chat a little bit, that's okay. So thank you all for being here. And maybe I'll say that 2 weeks from today is Marianne Williamson. Some of you might want to catch on and see what Marianne's thinking about lately. I said she's become writes editorials now for Newsweek magazine, and they're very well done. And then in 4 weeks from today, Jeff Siebert and I talking about the man, Ken Wapnick, and the message that he brought to share with us. So that should be very exciting too. It's the first time that I've been able to persuade Jeff to step up and to come on screen, and he's ready to do it, which was really, really exciting about this. So, all right. Anybody want to share? I'd like to share, maybe, let me see if I can get the Lord's Prayer on. Anybody want to volunteer to read this? Lynn? Okay, hold on.
The Lord's Prayer from A Course in Miracles. Forgive us our illusions, Father, and help us to accept our true relationship with you, in which there are no illusions and where none can ever enter. Our holiness is yours. What can there be in us that needs forgiveness when yours is perfect? The sleep of forgetfulness is only the unwillingness to remember your forgiveness and your love. Let us not wander into temptation, for the temptation of the Son of God is not your will. And let us receive only what you have given and accept but this into the minds which you created and which you love. Amen.
Amen.